News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. Spirit Airlines shares now 60% lower after a Wall Street Journal report that the airline is shutting down. Spirit had been hoping to finalize a $500 million bailout lifeline from the government before running out of cash. Bloomberg chief correspondent for global aviation Sid Phillips says the creditors were a roadblock to agreeing to any deal with the government.
That was primarily because of concerns about basically liabilities and what their recoveries would look like post a government deal. And so because of that, the government deal can't go forward.
Bloomberg's Sid Phillip on Bloomberg Intelligence. President Trump says he'll place a 25% tariff on autos from the European Union. In a social media post, the president accused the EU of not complying with the trade deal with the U.S. The president says these new tariffs will take effect next week. Iran state-run media says that country has delivered a new proposal to the U.S. through Pakistan. The conflict now at its 60-day mark as President Trump vows to keep the naval blockade in place. Bloomberg's David Gura.
The president, it seems, according to Axios, who is citing two unnamed U.S. officials, is leaning toward keeping that blockade of Iranian ports in place. He thinks that it's working. He thinks it's applying this kind of economic vice on Iran that longer, and what that's going to do is force Iran back to the table. I should say Iran is adamant that is not going to be the case.
David Gura hosts the Bloomberg Big Take podcast and Bloomberg This Weekend, Saturdays and Sundays, 7 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio and Television and the Bloomberg Business app. Today marks 60 days since President Trump notified Congress about his attack on Iran, a key milestone for his legal authority to continue the war. Under the federal war powers law, a president is required to get approval from Congress after 2 months of war, end the conflict, or Trump can seek a 30-day extension. Most Republicans hope if they give the president enough room, the fighting will wrap up before they have to weigh in. Lawmakers are not in Washington today. They'll be out all next week. ExxonMobil delivered an income beat, though its profit fell to a 5-year low tied to a temporary accounting charge on derivatives contracts. ExxonMobil CEO Darren Woods.
If you look at the unprecedented disruption in the world supply of oil and natural gas, the market hasn't seen the full impact of that yet. And you only have to look at the ranges that oil prices have moved at.
ExxonMobil CEO Darren Woods on the company's first quarter earnings call. ExxonMobil shares now 1% lower. And while Chevron is less exposed to Middle East disruptions, production dipped roughly 5% on a sequential basis. Even so, per share profit beat analyst estimates. Chevron shares more than 1% lower. And checking oil prices, WTI now topping $101 a barrel and Brent crude nearing $108 per barrel. U.S. manufacturing is still expanding, even with the war driving up prices for factories. The Institute for Supply Management's Factory Index held steady in April at its highest level since 2022. The gauge of prices paid rose for a fourth straight month to a 4-year high. The dollar fell on the ISM miss. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index now 0.2% lower. We're hearing from 2 of the 3 Fed officials who dissented on this week's rate decision because of language that signaled the next move should be a cut. Bloomberg's Michael McKee reports on the statement from Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkari.
He sees 2 scenarios ahead, neither one particularly great for the Fed. One is a fairly quick reopening of the strait, which means rates will be on hold for an extended period, or an extended closure, which would mean rate hikes and potentially a series of them.
Bloomberg's Mike McKee reports Cleveland Fed President Beth Hammack put out a separate statement saying uncertainty has increased for the year and a clear easing bias is no longer appropriate given the outlook. A record-breaking run drove stocks toward their longest weekly rally since 2024 after a batch of solid corporate earnings and signs of economic strength. U.S. stocks are drifting higher and oil prices holding steady. We check markets for you all day long here at Bloomberg. The S&P 500 up 0.6%. NASDAQ up a little more than 1%. The Dow little changed on the upside. The 10-year Treasury yield at 4.37%. The 2-year yield at 3.87%. The Pentagon has struck deals with several big tech companies to deploy their advanced AI tools on classified military networks. Oracle, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon Web Services, and Reflection AI are joining a roster that already includes Google, OpenAI, and SpaceX. Pentagon Chief Technology Officer Emil Michael discussed the new agreements on CNBC.
What we've learned is that it's irresponsible to be reliant on any one partner. And we learned that that one partner didn't really want to work with us in the way we wanted to work with them.
Pentagon CTO Emil Michael was referring to Anthropic, the AI giant that the Defense Department has deemed a supply chain risk. The Trump administration has been looking to expand access to Anthropic's controversial Mythos model. Michael says that's a separate issue. Shares of Apple now more than 5% higher after it delivered a surprisingly strong revenue forecast for the third quarter, even as it warned that memory chip costs will increase and shortages of Mac computers will persist for months. Dan Ives is global head of tech research at Wedbush Securities.
This was as robust of a quarter and guide as we've seen in a few years. I mean, this is almost a mini super cycle that's playing out. I think there's a stock that's going to have huge upside here. And it's just as Cook's handing the baton to Turnus. Really a golden night for Apple.
Dan Ives at Wedbush Securities. And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris, and this is Bloomberg.